Most business owners are using AI for basic tasks like emails. The ones that are getting ahead, they're using it to transform how they work. I'm Tania Gomez. 6 months ago, I didn't know the difference between ChatGPT and a chatbot. Now I'm learning from AI experts, testing tools in real businesses, and sharing everything that works. Because AI won't replace you, but someone using AI will. This is the AI Apprentice. Join our free community of practice at providercollective.com.au, where hundreds of business owners are learning together. We start as AI apprentices, but we leave as masters. Let's get into it. Welcome to the AI Apprentice. My name is Tania Gomez and I'm your host today. And today I'm joined by Sabeh Hassan from Eriko AI again. Welcome back, Sabeh. It's so nice to have you.
Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Always. So today we're going to be talking about the Jargon decoder, trying to make sense of AI language. So I guess my goal in this episode is to unpack the most common AI terms and concepts so that we actually know what on earth they mean when we're starting to experiment with AI more generally. Kind of like anything, it's kind of like a new language or a new dialect. And, you know, I joke with my NDIS clients that I'm fluent in NDIS commission, which is a different dialect than NDIA or the agency and what participants use. And with AI, it really is like a new language. There's all these words that I've never heard before. I'm certainly not technical, although I love tech. So I guess you are technical. You have lots of experience with AI and data and analytics and all these things that, you know, even just data and analytics sounds scary to me. So before we jump into that, can you tell me a little bit about your background with AI and what you do with Eriko AI? And also we could add in auditly there as if you'd like to talk about that as well. So we have a little bit of context as to why it is we're asking you to decode the language of AI.
Yeah, of course. So I have actually a data analytics background. I worked in industry, primarily working in the sales, marketing, customer success, building data products, analytics products. And then that is really helping because that's sort of like the foundations of AI. And after, spending about 15, 16 years in industry, started a company called Eriko AI, and we build business solutions. Particularly anywhere where there's operational need to find efficiencies or generate new revenue. So we like to work with companies big and small. Working on that. Now, in terms of auditly, partnering with yourselves, we found that there is a need for companies to have personalized, tailored policies and compliance needs within the NDIS space, and also home care. So we've created a AI platform that takes in information from various providers, and then it goes through a visit. At the end, they get personalized policies. And we're also working on building that so it is a operationally easy to use as well in terms of the day-to-day. So
Well done. Great explanation. I was laughing in the last podcast episode when you were saying that some people don't want to run tech companies. They should just do their business well. And it kind of made me laugh because I started trying to figure out a solution for me to use internally, and it turned into running a tech business and an AI platform. So maybe I'm the exception to the rule, or maybe I'm one of those crazy people that should have just stayed in my lane and built a tool to help my business.
Maybe I could have maybe expanded on that a little bit. Or one of the things is like for example, I don't have NDIS background, so partnering up and collaborating is the other option, right? The thing was, the example I was giving particularly was the provider wanted to do this on their own, build essentially their company on their own. So one of the advices I was giving was that you can, but here's what it would actually mean, right? If you want to do this by yourself, you're actually building that tech company. Either partner up with someone or collaborate. I think that might be a gradual progression into that world. But unless you're really keen on, like I was saying in the previous podcast, if you want to build data pipelines and manage engineers, it's a very different world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll leave that to you. Thank you. So let's go through some of these words and see if you can explain them in a way that's simple for the basic non-tech person like myself to understand. So let's start with machine learning. What exactly does machine learning mean?
So it's essentially a software that's learning from examples instead of hard rules. And maybe I can explain what's the difference. So hard rules, think of more like automation. So we say, if A happens, then do B. Or if there is a duplication, remove the duplicates. It basically, you've given it some parameters and it sort of follows those to the letter. It can't do anything beyond whatever the rules you've set. Whereas machine learning, it looks at historical information and sees the patterns, and from that patterns it generates new things. But it's learning from example, and there's various different types of machine learning techniques, different models, and there's different ways of doing that. So that's basically it. Really, it looks at historical data and then it regenerates new information based on whatever it's learned historically.
Okay, so machine learning is simply the machine, the computer, or the system learning from data that's been input.
Yeah, exactly. And another word you might hear about is neural networks. Neural networks are just the maths behind recognizing that pattern. So whether it's images, sound, or language, it's just basically the technique of how it does that. And neural networks is one of the ways it recognizes these patterns. And the interesting thing with all of these terms, like machine learning, neural networks, UPT, is that they're just doing the same thing in different ways, which is just recognizing patterns, but doing it at scale. That's the thing, right? It does that at huge sort of volumes of data. And this is the reason companies like NVIDIA and the big tech giants that are creating these chips, it's because they need so much of that power to do all of the recognizing those patterns with so much of information that they need these new and more advanced chips to do it really fast. So that's basically what it is. It's just different ways of recognizing patterns.
And what about learning model, or LM? What's a learning model?
So LLM so basically, look, a large language model. Maybe I'll take a step back because you hear things like GPT as well. Maybe I'll cover that first. It basically stands for generative pre-trained transformer. That's what. So generative means it creates text. Pre-trained means that it's learned from information, and transformer is the architecture that makes it good at understanding context. So that's what it is. So you see chat, GPT, and it's an LLM. And the LLM is just a type of AI that's been trained, again, on massive amount of text. And it sort of understands and generates language. That's all it is. So the types of pattern learning that we're talking about with the LLM, it's just done that on large volumes of text.
Right.
And the LLM is also a form of neural network.
Okay.
So except for images, or video, it's just done it on text.
Okay. So then ChatGPT just is a learning model, a large language model that is that is generative and pre-trained, and the reason they use chat is because you're chatting with it like a chatbot.
It's a branding, you can say, basically.
It's branding. Okay. And what about UPT?
In which context? In terms of how it's different? Because it depends on the context.
So if someone's talking about a UPT as opposed to a GBT, is that the same thing?
No, I mean, Sometimes it's sort of like usage per task. How to describe like AI automation actions needed to complete a task.
Okay.
There's GPT, maybe.
And is that where tokens come in?
So tokens. So yes, tokens. A bunch of small texts that are used within the technique of like the tiny pieces of text that AI reads and it sort of writes in. That's what it is. And different the volumes of those tokens affect how much the model can handle the information at once. So for example, like a short email maybe has like 100 or 200 tokens. That's how much you can handle. A page might be a text which is like 400 to 600 tokens. So tokens is just the amount of volume of short text which it trains on and it writes on. So if you remember, even on Auditly, if you remember one of the things that I was saying that it might not be a good idea to use out of the box or like a ChatGPT type of tool to generate these policies is because then one of the things I mentioned was it's quickly going to run out of tokens to be able to do long documents in one go. And that was the reason, because there are limitations what these models can do. So there's different ways of doing the same information. So instead of doing it that way, what we did was we had to break down all of those policies into smaller chunks. So all of the annoying mapping exercises that I was getting you to help with was because of that. So we can split up that 1,000 pages of document into smaller bits and chunks. The model can actually handle that volume of text in a more efficient way. So if the model has a limitation on the number of tokens in an LLM, it may produce the information, but it might be of lower quality because it's run out of tokens and it starts hallucinating sometimes. It doesn't produce as accurate. That's basically what the tokens are. I know it's a long answer, but hopefully that's a little bit what it is.
And what's the difference between generative AI and agentic AI?
Okay. The two different. So generative, as the name suggests, it generates things, right? Generates text, generates images. Agentic, it's just another. I feel like it's another term that just it's creating this confusion. It just does. So I take an LLM, right? It's giving you some information. Now, within that process, if it can also send an email, that's an agent. We can call that's an agent because it's doing a particular activity as well beyond just generating something. So agents basically, kind of like humans, we do things. Agents also do things, and then they just give it a name, calling it agentic. It's basically agents that do certain things. They can do maybe multiple things. You can maybe do one thing. You can train it to do that particular task. And a lot of the times, it's just automation as well. So once you credit this email, send it to this person. If it's to do with sales, send it to this email address, right? So that you basically created an agent and is basically doing tasks. And then we're calling it agentic AI.
Okay. So generative AI in my head is when I like prompt with ChatGPT or I chat with ChatGPT and ask it to do something and it does it because I've prompted it, as opposed to agentic AI is I've set up a specific agent who's going to go and do that task every time those conditions are set. Is that right?
Yeah. And there's different forms of agents, right? You can literally, it's just automating tasks. I mean, I like to just think about it. Yeah, it's just you're getting it to do things. It can do you can even train model agents to actually do the part that you're talking about, which is writing, writing a command or an input into an LLM. So it can read documents, it can draft responses, it can save things, send emails, update a system. It can take the next step without you prompting. So what you were saying, that I think of generative AI as when I have to prompt and gives back a response. You can train an agent to even write the prompt on your behalf as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So there is an example of one of the large financial services provider where they have multiple agents in unison, basically. So you can tell it that I want to purchase something, right? I want to purchase a shoes or a t-shirt, and you give it some description of what you're looking for. It'll find it. It'll complete the transaction. It'll give it your address. It will do the whole end to end. It will close the transaction, and you will have that item at your doorstep. All you've done really is just tell AI, say, hey, I want this.
Yeah.
And we'll do that. So the whole behind the scenes architecture is built on different types of agents talking to each other to complete the whole journey, right? From going online, finding whatever the product is, closing that transaction, and then giving it all the information it needs to send the parcel out, all of the tasks. So that's where it's sort of like where the whole life cycle of things like that is changing. With agents, more and more agents are coming online and doing these tasks, often repetitive. So if there's anything that's digital, repetitive, an agent is likely to be is going to take that over.
Yeah. And when we say agent, that is just a system that has been set up to do repetitive tasks automatically based on whatever you programmed it to do.
Yeah, maybe it's just even a simpler way to think about it. There's generative AI, and the agents are sitting on top of it.
Yeah. Okay.
And the agents can interact and do things on top. So agents they create and take action. Generative AI creates the output.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, what about hallucination? What does that mean?
Oh, I mean, basically because it's these models, as if you remember, they look at historical data and they see patterns and then produce output. The hallucinations are outputs that are not intended or weren't the outputs you're looking for, and that could happen for various reasons. One of the reasons is that it doesn't have enough information or quality information to actually recognize those patterns accurately. So it's filling in the gaps, really. And if it's filling in those gaps, it might not actually sound like, what does that mean? It's like hallucinating. It's giving the wrong information. It could be because of the poor quality of data that you've provided, and it's picked up patterns, but those patterns are not correct. And that could be the underlying data is not structured in the right way, or it's poor quality data. Another reason could be was the tokens issue, as an example that I was saying, that you asked it to do something that is it's not capable of doing because it's hitting its limits. And again, it's filling in the gaps with whatever it can. So the reasons why is actually very difficult. I mean, oftentimes we don't even know why the models are, how they work, right? It just works. And why they hallucinate as well, it's really hard for myself to give you the exact reason why they do, but there are usually, you can sort of figure out what could be the case, and sometimes it's a bit of a trial and error. Like you go over, try and sort of start to eliminate what could be the reason. And even with Auditly, my number one concern was actually the hallucination part, because I've seen that happen often, where you're producing vast volumes of text. And who's going to do the QA, right? Like you can't sit there doing on hundreds of pages of QA to make sure it's correct. And if you're going to use AI to do that QA, sort of, it's a circular argument, right? It's not going to be able to sort of pick those things up because it produces it itself. So to avoid these hallucinations, there are techniques to make sure that one, the data is of good quality, it makes sense, it's structured in the way that the AI can use it properly. The architecture or the model is intended to be able to use that information, and the infrastructure supports it. If you tick those boxes, then it's less likely that it will hallucinate. And then there are settings, and if you build something custom, there are configurations or settings within the model itself to try and adjust how much of a free hand the model has to produce the output. You can be very strict, or you can be a bit more lenient. If it's marketing, I would say it's not as critical. It
Yeah.
can be creative, but if it's something that's like policy where
Mm.
it's auditable, it's going to be audited actually, and needs to meet standards. Those configurations or settings needs to be of a higher standard, and like the scrutiny is going to be a lot more. So, and this was probably why me going on about data all the time is important, right? Especially in the business context. This is the reason why.
Yeah.
And then if I have to then explain why that happened, it becomes very difficult. I can't just say, well, that's what the computer says, or that's what the model says. But at least if we can do whatever we can to reduce it from hallucinating, then I guess we're sort of like doing the right thing.
So
Again,
I guess
sorry, go. Yeah.
if I recap the definition of hallucination, then it would be basically false statements, or it's making things up.
It's making things up.
Yeah,
basically.
it's filling in the gaps.
It is. It gives you an answer that sounds confident, but it's wrong. It's lying.
Yeah.
It's predicting the likely response based on the patterns, but it's false. It's it's not true.
And what about open source AI? What does open source mean?
So it doesn't have to do with AI. Just in general, if we think about open source and closed source, open source basically is the technology is publicly available, so anyone can go in, look at it, improve it, modify it, run it in their own system, and it's transparent. So it's in you have to look at the T's and C's. If it's, for example, like you can use it commercially. If you want to use it in your business, if you're able to use it commercially, you can effectively use it for free. You can customize it. You can see the underlying code, how it was generated or how it was created, and that could be for software. It could be for models. It could be for a whole bunch of techie things. If it's open source, it could be operating systems. Closed source is basically it's owned by a company. Right? So you don't actually see the code. You can't modify it. You can't change it. Think of ChatGPT, right, or Gemini. That is closed source. They don't provide you the ability to change the underlying code, or you can't see how they did things. There's pros and cons of both. For SMEs, generally, closed source are usually a bit better because they're easy to adopt. You can you don't need to manage the infrastructure, the stable, reliable, etc. On the other hand, open source, you can customize it. You can run it privately. One of the things to think about is it's why would someone want to go with, say, open source versus closed source, right? Say you have, and if we're in the healthcare space, patient information, right?
Yeah.
And or participant information. There might be some rules or regulation in place that the data can't leave the environment, or you can't, the data needs to be secured. From a company's perspective, like if I'm a company, I don't want my data going somewhere else.
Yeah.
I don't want my data going to ChatGPT or wherever. Like I don't know how they're going to use it. I don't want people to train the information on. What I could do is get an open source, for example, like a model, and in simple words, install it in my environment that I manage. And I know that I can control and make it so secure that my data does not leave my environment, doesn't go anywhere else. And then I can use the open source models to run on top of that data, and then I can basically make sure that everything is run in my environment. Whereas ChatGPT, it's really great. Open AI has, also come out with enterprise tools that sort of say that you can protect, they'll protect the security of the data and whatnot. But for whatever reason, you still don't trust it. You don't want that data going from your system to another data center. Then that is one of the big reasons why people go for open source.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. The last one I want to ask you was prompt. What does prompt mean?
As in like when we're using ChatGPT and we're writing a prompt.
Yeah.
It's basically an instruction that you give AI. So like it's basically the input.
Yeah, that's simple. That's a simple one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What about AI slop?
AI
Slop.
slop.
Yeah. I've heard this a lot lately. AI slop, meaning like the outputs from ChatGPT when everything sounds the same.
Oh, okay. It's low quality generic copy paste.
Yeah.
It's you can tell it's produced by AI.
Yeah.
Maybe a good way to do it is maybe start with don't make this sound like AI slop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good definition. Cool. Okay, I think they were most of the ones that I thought people would understand. How can someone stay up to date with all the changes and all these acronyms without kind of getting lost in all the tech talk? Have you got any tips and hints?
Yes, we can. So the challenge with a lot of this stuff is that the AI came out of the academic and engineering circles, so
Yeah.
the language wasn't really created for like SMEs or even the business people. It was created for researchers, and then these tech companies took those same terminologies and put it into marketing. You start hearing all of this stuff, right? Like all these words, and you're like, I'm just so lost. But you don't necessarily, and if you try and keep up all the time, it's going to be very difficult, I'll be honest, especially if you're not from that world. So just make it really like simple for yourself, in those three things, really three key things. The data, it's what AI learns from. The model / AI, what does the thinking, and automation is how you use it. You can take all of these terminologies and words. Maybe you can even just try and relate it to those three things, right? Are we talking about the data? Like, for example, you talked about agentic, right? What is agentic? And if you understand those three things, it can really make it easy for you to sort of associate what are we actually talking about. So if someone throws in some word you don't understand, you can simply ask them, is this some sort of an automation tool? Is it a model? Is it data? And do it that way, because I'll be honest, it will be more. There will be more and more terminologies that will come, and it'll be really hard to keep track. Even sometimes I have to look up things like, what is this new thing? And then you realize it's usually one of those three things anyway. So I wish there was an easy way for me to say, go do this. But maybe have one or two people in your circle that you can connect with, or maybe watch this these podcasts, or have someone in your circle that you can sort of lean on at times if it gets a bit difficult or hard to understand. But yeah, that sort of would be my advice. Just make it really look at the foundational frameworks and just understand them. The rest is just additional information.
So what were those three things? Data, tools?
Yeah. Three things, yep. Let's start from the bottom, the data layer.
Yeah.
This is where the AI learns from, right?
Yeah.
And
data just means information. It's just the input.
Input. We talk, I think in the previous podcast you talked about CRM, right? Yeah. All of that information going in, that's information, that's data. You can take the data and do a whole bunch of stuff with it. And it's a good point here. And think about all of the IP information that you're running in your business. Some of it might not be documented or digitized. It might be sitting in your head. It might be sitting in some process. One of the SMEs I went to and looked at the business, they had a really nice structured SharePoint site. And I said, okay, let's actually look at, and I thought, wow, well, this is really well structured. And when I said, let's look at a few of these documents. When we went in, they had a whole bunch of documents ongoing that were just scanned. They were handwritten. So really valuable information. Is one of the MBS providers. So even though they had that information, but you can't really use that until it's digitized. So so think about information that you may not necessarily think that is going to be useful. Try and store it somewhere in a digitized form, whether it's structured or unstructured. Yeah. So that's the data. That's the data that I'm talking about. And that's what the AI in the business world, that's where it's going to learn from. The second layer is the model, or the AI brain. That's the part that does the thinking.
Yeah.
So if someone asks or says, are you using Claude or are you using Gemini? If you're not unsure, you can ask the question, is that a model that you're talking about? Is it a model? If they say it's a model, then you know what it is, right? It's the thinking bit. And the last one is the automation. And this is the thing that you use. Usually it's like what you can actually see. It's something that's reducing manual work.
And that could be a tool.
It could be a tool. It could be an agent.
Yeah.
It could be an agent. Send an email to do this or do that. A lot of the rules that so in your business, you've got these rules in place, all the things that you've automated, when an inquiry comes in, goes into a CRM, sends an invoice, all of that. These are all automation, part in the automation layer. So if you just break it down to those three and just ask the question, where does this sit? Then you sort of get an idea about what it is for and what is it doing. And there's obviously various degrees of complexity within those three things, but it all usually falls into that those three layers.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. That gives me kind of a bit of a framework into where to put all of these different acronyms that are flying around.
Yeah.
I think that was the baseline of what I wanted to discuss today. Is there anything else you think we need to talk about when it comes to getting out there, using AI and understanding the language of AI?
I think any of this sort of stuff, and personally for myself, the more practically I use or get hands-on with some of these things, the faster I learn personally myself. And I find people also get I find it a little more easier to relate to when it's more practical in nature. So maybe find one or two things, right? And see how you can, again, think about your business and it's actually going to help. And then figure out what I can do to maybe make the process more efficient, or find some sort of an automation that can be done, and actually do it. Find something very simple to do. That's the easiest way. I find that you can start to learn even these terms, and use ChatGPT. Like, if you don't understand, it's easy these days, right? In the language that you want, in the way that you want.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's the perfect segue to talk about the AI Apprentice online community. So inside the community, we've written all these experiments for you to use, and you can, think about the automations, think about the different models you might want to use, and think about the data that you're going to input and use to get a certain outcome. So lots of free resources and expertise and a community inside there to connect with and to start experimenting with some of this AI as well. Lastly, Sabeh, is if someone wants to reach out, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, my email is Sabeh, SABEH, at Eriko, ERIKO.ai.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining me today.
No worries. Thanks, Tania.
In 30 minutes, you just learned what most business owners will spend months trying to figure out on their own. Want to keep that momentum going? Join our free AI Apprentice community at providercollective.com.au. Hundreds of business owners testing tools and sharing real wins. Come and be an AI apprentice with me. Let's become masters together. I'll see you next week, or better yet, I'll see you inside the community today.